Hi, and welcome back to Your Future, Your Finances. I'm your host, Brian Kuhn. We're talking again with Nina Heck of Guidewell Financial Solutions. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Last segment, we talked a little bit about all of the services you offer, but specifically student loans. That seems to be an enormous issue facing a lot of people nowadays. This is a new program that you offer, student loan counseling. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, our counselors had to go through a certification process for the student loan counseling piece, so I just want to make sure that your viewers know that. You know, again, what we're trying to do is reach them before they become troubled with defaulted student loans, but we found that in many cases they were contacting us at that stage. So there are still some programs available to them, such as the rehabilitation program, should they find themselves in default. I think the key to the counseling is understanding that more of the help is for the federal student loan versus the private student loans.
Yeah. You said a rehabilitation program, so how does that work?
So if a person finds themselves in default, what they can do, the counselor can help them fill out the proper paperwork and forms to submit for the rehabilitation program, where they'll be required to make a certain amount of payments one time, and once they do that, they bring the loan out of default, and it actually improves the credit score, and it goes back in, and possibly at that point it has the potential to be consolidated, meet a debt consolidation.
So is that a program that the lenders of money have to abide by, or
for the federal loans, this is a real program that will help for the ones, you know, again, that are in default. The problem is that if they wait till they're already being garnished, it would run simultaneously until they meet the required number of payments. And I believe it's 9 that they have to pay consecutively in order for that to happen. But once they reach, and again, I believe it's about 4 or 5, it would stop the garnishment, and then but they still have to continue paying until they reach that total, and then that's when it would bring it out of that default status. So it can be very beneficial. But again, the key is reaching out and getting help before you get that far.
Yeah, and you mentioned a big distinction in the student loan world, federal versus private. Why is there such a distinction and such a difference between the two types of loans?
So private doesn't have all the benefits that the federal loans have with different programs such as like public service forgiveness and teacher loan forgiveness. And different consolidation options. They can refinance, they can consolidate, but you really need to start by understanding what you have. And I think that's key with a lot of the private student loan lenders that we've listened to so far. Trying to have the consumer dig out their paperwork and understand who in fact has their loan has been a real task. But we have to start with that because we have to know who we're dealing with, and then have them also know, based upon what the actual promissory note said, what their options were should they become troubled and not be able to repay the loans in a timely manner. Our hope as we go forward with this is that some things will start to open up with the private student loan industry, and I know even the National Foundation for Credit Counseling is trying to engage in some talk with some of the private lenders. So we would really like to be able to work with all of that while we have them on the phone, and we're trying to shore up that budget, and we're making sure that if they have trouble with credit card debt, and just be able to work on all of the issues at hand, rather than to work on everything and then have to leave this separate space for these private student loans till we find out what can be done.
Yeah, and I guess it's the result of the federal student loans can only lend so much, or only apply to certain colleges, I guess, because it sounds like everybody would choose federal loans if they could.
They would if they could, but oftentimes what happens is it doesn't meet the total amount of money that they're looking for, so they band-aid it with the private loans.
Okay.
And then some you just find where the schools, depending on what they're applying for, we found that the highest rate of default would be the students who owe $10,000 or less. So a lot of it's been found in for-profit schools where they have high costs and they do a lot of private lending, and it's co-signed by a lot of parents, and the student isn't able to continue engaging in the actual lending process because it's too much, so they drop out, and the statistics show that they actually end up almost as bad as a person who's never went to college and actually dropped out of school. They're they fall in that same category, which is really sad because now they owe this debt and they don't have anything to show for it.
Yeah, you have to graduate so that your
Absolutely.
earnings over your lifetime are there to pay back the debt, ideally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maryland, you have in here, Maryland did not fare particularly well in a total credit score. So does that have to do with the student loan or just general credit? Why is Maryland not very good?
So I don't believe it has much to do with student loans. I'm sure that that added to it, but more of this data was from previous years. So I really do believe that an awful lot of it was people just not having a good backup plan should a crisis arise, as it did, when we had the economic hardships. But again, not having a savings plan, not having, an emergency savings. But this is, this also impacts just people every day. But it really does when you have something like a crisis actually occur. So we just found that so many people were in a position where they weren't able to continue. A lot of people were trying to figure out what to do with these foreclosed homes. Many that had gone through, the HAMP programs and different programs to reduce their mortgages only found out later that they still couldn't afford the houses. So it furthered that, impact on their credit score. So there was a lot of digging out during that time, and a lot of people suffered. And some just, quite frankly, gave up. When we counsel some of the people that contact us, everything they have is in collections. So they've waited to the point where it's no longer with a servicer or a lender. It's just all collection accounts, and they're just trying to figure out how to get this 500 credit score back to something that's good.
Yeah. You mentioned the word HAMP, so that's dealing with mortgage loans. That was a federal program that came out. You deal with that a lot in helping people?
The housing department does just that. So if a person feels that they can't meet their mortgage, they should certainly give us a call for that alone, just to make sure that they don't go down that path and fall behind. It doesn't take, too long to miss a mortgage payment and then start pulling from other areas to try to repay that mortgage payment that was missed. And then before you know it, just really snowballs and you're behind on many different items.
Yep. We got to take another break. We got a great segment coming up. We're going to have a guest or a participant who went through Guidewell's program give us a firsthand account of the progress she was able to make. So we'll be right back.